8.9, halfway through this unit, I asked you to think of times when Great Britain or England, whichever you want to call it, when there was an attempt to invade or take over Britain, whether successful or not. And examples that you came up with, we've got the Romans, one of the very earliest. There is the Norman invasion of 1066 and the Battle of Hastings. We talked about Elizabeth, that we spoke of earlier in this year, and the Spanish Armada of 1588, and Napoleon. Now, the first two, the Romans and the Normans, they were successful. The Norman invasion was the last successful invasion in 1066. In modern times, Britain has never been conquered. We see that with Elizabeth and with Napoleon. By June of 1940, Britain really is the only country left. Hitler has gone on his progression of aggression from the Rhineland to Austria, the Sudetenland and Czechoslovakia, Poland, Denmark and Norway, and in spring of 1940, Netherlands, Belgium, and France. So Britain really is the only country left. Neville Chamberlain, who his whole process at the Munich conference and trying to avoid war completely failed, and he feels that he has let down the British people, so he resigns. And Winston Churchill is made prime minister. Remember, he had already been restored to power as the head of the Navy, but now Churchill will be an integral part of Britain's role in World War II. After the Battle of Dunkirk, or the miracle at Dunkirk, when those British troops jump into the English Channel and live to fight another day, it really seems very likely that Hitler's next target is Britain, because France no longer can help. Britain has no allies. Remember, France is split in two. We've got in the north the occupied zone that Hitler conquered, in the south Vichy France that not necessarily surrendered but cooperated. So they have more independence because they cooperated with Hitler. This is exactly what Churchill does not want to happen to Britain. He would rather fight and possibly win freedom rather than just give it up. So Hitler absolutely intended to invade. It is called Operation Sea Lion, and it would be an amphibious assault from the coast of France, sail across the English Channel, and land in England, and also have some parachutists dropping behind lines to help prepare the invasion. The English Channel has been a really important part of why Britain has been able to prevent any modern takeovers. The British Navy and its superiority have allowed Britain's independence. So imagine summer 1940 being in Britain and knowing that Hitler is coming for you. I mean, it must have been incredibly terrifying. And Churchill will be an important part of uniting the people, in addition to King George VI. But now, 1940, most people have radios, so they can hear the words, they can hear the voice of their leader speaking into their living room saying, no, you must continue on, you have to. We have no choice. Otherwise, there is no free world left, really. So here's a great clip if you want to watch it. It is an excerpt from Churchill's famous speech about we will fight on the beaches and we will never surrender. So this leads us to the Battle of Britain. Churchill had said, the battle for France is lost, the battle for Britain has just begun. So this is July to October 1940. Hitler knows that before he can invade, he will need to eliminate the British Air Force. So he begins by bombing the air bases, trying to disable the British Air Force. Because the British aren't just going to sit around and let that happen, they will engage in dogfights with the Germans. So planes shooting at each other. So we've got the Luftwaffe, is the German Air Force, and the Royal Air Force of Britain. So again, Hitler's whole purpose is to attack the RAF bases, to disable or disarm the Air Force, so that when he invades, there will be no airborne assault on his troops. You have to remember that Germany has been preparing for this for years. Germany has more planes, they have more pilots, they have been getting ready for a very long time, especially if you think back to 1937, we talked about Guernica. The Luftwaffe is far more prepared and much stronger than the RAF. In terms of the types of planes that they use, you see the bottom picture, that is the German plane most often used, the Messerschmitt, and it needed to be large enough to carry enough fuel to get over from the continent, also to carry bombs. That was their whole goal, was to bomb the bases. The British do a great job of stepping up production very quickly, and the types of planes they create are called Hurricanes and Spitfires. They're much smaller, which means they're faster. They can maneuver easier. So in this way, the British actually do a really great job and sort of level out the playing field from the German advantage. Technology other than the planes, the development of radar, radio detection and ranging. The British can use radar to see when are the Germans coming, when are they approaching, so they can have a little bit of warning and get their fighters up in the air. It's not very effective for the Germans because the Germans are on the offensive. So finding out when the enemy's coming doesn't help much. They know where the enemy is. They know where the air bases are. They know where England is. Then we have the issue of geography. Now, while it is terrifying to have your country attacked, it does actually provide a benefit. For the Germans, if they're running out of fuel, they're in a dogfight and they're running out of fuel, they have to get back safely to the continent. For the British planes, the RAF, if they're running out of fuel, they just need to pop down. Their airfields are right below them, and then they can quickly get back up in action. Also, if a plane is damaged. If a British plane is damaged, it makes a crash landing, and they salvage the plane, or they can at least use parts from it, and they can treat the airmen. For the Germans, if they crash land, they're in enemy territory, so they will lose the plane, the technology will be taken over by the British, and possibly even the pilot will be able to give some sort of information to the British. So in the long run, the Germans lose more pilots, they lose more planes, and sort of unbelievably, the British hold on. And Churchill famously said, "Never was so much owed by so many to so few." That these pilots, they hadn't been training for years. There weren't hundreds and thousands of them. This was a small group of pilots who truly did save Britain from being conquered. That was it for notes. If you want to watch another clip from the same movie about Churchill, there's a clip over in Canvas about the possible involvement of the U.S. as well as these pilots.